Patrick Bateman is a man who has everything. Money, status, designer suits, and a skincare routine that would make even the most committed beauty guru jealous. And yet he has nothing. Absolutely nothing. If American Psycho is about anything, it's about the horrifying void that lies at the heart of materialism. It's about money without meaning, consumption without contentment, and a world where business cards are, well, more important than human lives. Philosophers have long warned us about the dangers of reducing ourselves to material beings. Aristotle believed that a good life was about flourishing, virtue, purpose. Bateman, on the other hand, is the walking, talking antithesis of this. His life isn't about flourishing, it's about flexing. He doesn't seek purpose, he seeks perfection. And not even for himself, but for how others see him. Enter Jean-Paul Sartre and existentialism. Sartre told us that existence precedes essence. We are not born with meaning, we create it. Bateman, however, is an empty shell, someone who never creates meaning but instead fills his void with designer labels and, well, blood. He wears the mask of a successful Wall Street yuppie, but behind it, absolutely nothing. He's the human equivalent of an empty Armani suit. There's a simple economic theory that argues human beings act rationally to maximize their own self-interest. Bateman does exactly this. His self-interest just happens to include murdering homeless people and co-workers who have better business cards. But what does he actually get out of it? Does he feel better? No. He keeps killing, keeps consuming, keeps up the facade of a high-status, high-value man. But none of it makes a difference. This is exactly what German philosopher Arthur Schopenhauer meant when he said that desire is a treadmill. We run and run, thinking we're getting somewhere, only to realize we are stuck in the same miserable loop. The tragedy of Bateman is that he embodies this idea completely. He keeps buying, keeps killing, keeps trying to outdo everyone around him, yet he never escapes his own misery. The more he consumes, the emptier he becomes. This is where Epicurus might have a word with Bateman. Epicurus argued that pleasure, when sought properly, leads to tranquility, not excess. He believed in a state of inner peace, free from unnecessary desires. On the other hand, Bateman, he is the exact opposite. He is trapped in this desire for more wealth, more status, more violence, but instead of finding satisfaction, he only deepens his own suffering. As Epicurus warned, if thou wilt make a man happy, add not unto his riches, but take away from his desires. One of the most famous scenes in this film is the business card scene. Bateman and his co-workers compare their nearly identical cards, marveling at the subtle differences in font, color, and texture. Look at that subtle off-white coloring. The tasteful thickness of it. Oh my god, it even has a watermark. And yes, it's hilarious because it's ridiculous, but also very deeply sad. This is a world where status is everything, where even a slightly better business card can be a threat to one's very existence. This is what Friedrich Nietzsche warned us about when he spoke of resentment, the deep, corrosive envy that makes us define ourselves through competition with others. Bateman doesn't have an identity outside of being better than everyone else, and when someone threatens that even in the smallest way, he loses it. It's almost poetic that Bateman, a man obsessed with surfaces, becomes most enraged by something as shallow as a business card. It's as if the universe is screaming, "This is stupid," but he just doesn't get it. This reminds us of Heidegger's idea of das Man, the man, the inauthentic self who conforms to social expectations instead of creating a true identity. Bateman isn't just trapped in das Man, he is thus man. He is what society wants him to be, a perfect consumer, a walking brand, a man whose only value is his net worth and his taste in fine dining. Of course, the big question at the heart of American Psycho is, does Bateman really kill anyone, or is it all in his head? But honestly, does it matter? If we take a page from Baudrillard and the concept of hyperreality, Bateman's world is already fake. Everything is performance. The designer suits, the restaurant reservations, the shallow conversations, none of it is real. The idea of real violence in a world this artificial almost feels irrelevant. Baudrillard argues that we now live in a world where signs and symbols are more real than reality itself. That's why Bateman's confession, "I have to return some videotapes," feels as significant as any of his murders. The videotapes, the business cards, the designer suits, these are the real markers of life in his world. The killing's just another aesthetic choice. And here we might recall Camus and the myth of Sisyphus. Bateman's life is absurd, a meaningless cycle of wealth, violence, and routine. The question isn't whether he kills, the question is whether his existence itself is any less absurd than the violence he commits. Camus tells us that the struggle itself is enough to fill a man's heart. But Bateman never struggles, he never even questions. He is the perfect cog in the machine, doomed to repeat the same actions without ever realizing the futility of it all. At the end of the film, Bateman confesses his crimes, but no one cares. He realizes that in this world of high-status sociopaths, even mass murder is just another status symbol. This confession has meant nothing, he says, and he's right. He's trapped in a system that rewards the very emptiness that consumes him. And that's the ultimate joke of American Psycho. It's so over the top, so ridiculous, that it almost feels like satire. But is it really satire when we still live in a world where people worship billionaires, where we judge each other based on the labels we wear, and where being successful often just means looking successful? Maybe the real horror isn't Bateman. Maybe the real horror is that we see ourselves in him, even if just a little bit. Now, if you'll excuse me, I have to return some videotapes.